in what has been described, of course, by many as maladministration of the biggest proportion in the city of Johannesburg. The MMC is in possession of a report that shares what could have been taking place there, at least from what I am seeing since 2013. And the MMC is joining us now. MMC Loyiso Masuku, member of the Mayoral Committee for Group Corporate and Shared Services. MMC, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time and coming on this evening. It seems for 8 years straight, I mean, there's been some kind of maladministration or awarding of a tender wrongly, evasion of tax, unused SIM cards. And it goes on for a whole 8 years. And what is quite difficult about this situation is that it would have had varying administrations that would have been swapping hands at this particular point in time, which says it doesn't matter which administration is in place, there is rot in the system itself.
A very good evening. Thank you for having us, Thabo. This report, as you rightfully say, is one of the reports that is actually very important as part of the Government of Local Unity's priorities of good governance. And when you talk about good governance, you look at it holistically, and you have to then look at the officials who would have been charged with a particular responsibility, because remember, politicians don't get involved in the work of procurement. We are forbidden from getting involved in awarding of tenders, anything that has to do with supply chain management. So we have to look at, firstly, the cases themselves, and then the disciplinary board will then have to look at, was it an issue of dereliction of duty? Was it an issue of where the city suffered financial prejudice? Was it an issue of just not following certain supply chain processes and procedures? And that is why it's important that the council actually passed this report, so that it looks at that the disciplinary board then can be able to either, where necessary, recommend whether we can recover the money, or we open cases with the South African police, or it is a matter of just rehabilitation and training of the employees who may have not understood how to follow certain processes and procedures.
Yeah. I doubt our awarding of a security services contract would have happened without the knowledge of the mayor, who would have been in charge then. Yes, might say on paper. We know that these things are said on paper, that the politicians don't get involved. They do get involved. And there's been numerous cases where instructions would have come from the seniors or political heads, if you like. So are you saying still consequence management is not going to go all the way to the top? It's only going to end up at the officials?
You see, Thabo, the reason why there is a particular process is it is for the official to account and be able to take responsibility. And if you read our statement, it was clear that it was a panel that was contracted and awarded, and that panel was done irregularly. Processes were not followed by the officials or official who was responsible for awarding that particular tender. Now, in a process, those particular officials have got, if they had been wrongly advised or did something untoward, they have a responsibility to name and shame. That is what we talk about when we talk about clean governance and rooting out corruption. They must come up front, name and shame in an instance where they may have been influenced. That is why the law provides for an opportunity for you to state your case. And that is why the council also approved this, because you see, this is not our money. This is taxpayers' money. This is money that is supposed to provide services for our people, for our communities. So the onus is on all of us to make sure that where wrong was done, those must be brought to book.
So 6 reports in total that I see here in your statement. What is the quantum? What's the number? What's the figure that is attached to these contracts?
We're looking at, in total, for all of them, it's around 537 million that would have been lost by the city. And as I said earlier, it's 537 million that could have assisted in patching potholes, fixing streetlights, providing water tanks or something to that effect. But what I'm saying is that we must not even be worried about the amount. We must be worried about the fact that these things are occurring, because the amount, if it can be billions, if more is uncovered. What we must focus on is prevention, making sure that these financial misconducts don't happen. And these preventions are important because then it also sets the tone for clean governance, and making sure that we are prudent in managing our finances as the City of Johannesburg. And most of all, where wrong is done, then there's consequence management for those who would have done wrong, whether knowingly or unknowingly, but those who that's what the investigation must then be able to determine.
So to your knowledge, I mean, at this stage, are these officials still in the employ of the municipality?
Some are. Some are. You would have. Okay. You wouldn't have probably seen the in committee report, but some are in the employ of the city. Some have left, and even those who have left, Thabo, the law does permit for us to continue to pursue, and where anything needs to be recovered, then the proper processes have to be followed in an instance where there was financial prejudice. But some are, and some have left the employ of the city.
Yeah. And so what capacity do you have? Because it's quite a pile of these investigations that you would need to conduct.
Okay, so we've got in the City of Joburg, we've got various committees like the one I've spoken about, which is an independent advisory board, which actually looks at these financial misconducts. And what is also great about it is that part of the independent members who will form part of it come from provincial and national treasury. That's how seriously this matter is taken, and it is chaired. There is no councillor who sits in that. So it's an independent body. So there's no political representative who sits there. We've also got, of course, the group forensic team who also assist. And then, as I said earlier, in an instance where it requires the city manager to open a criminal case, we therefore then refer that to the South African Police Service.
Yeah. When you look at it, I mean, would you say things like instability in coalitions would be a contributing factor? Because if you look, for example, at it might maybe even be a small fee, but it might even be bigger than what I think. The SAP software licensing between 2021 and 2022, which was unutilized. There, you would have had the administration changing hands 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times.
That's why, Thabo, it's important for officials to remain officials and not preoccupy themselves with what is happening in the political arena. Officials are there to provide services. They must be ethical. They must be independent from political influence. And most importantly, they must serve the government of the day and the residents of the city, because they are employed. And recently, the municipal regulations have made it clear that senior managers, officials, must be employed at a permanent basis, which is your Section 56, particularly because they must take accountability, they must take responsibility for the departments that they run. And I always make this point that officials must be there to do the work of the city and not preoccupy themselves with the dynamics and the changes of the political terrain, because voters would have said that there is no political party that would have received 100% or 50% plus one. Therefore, coalitions are there, they exist, and we work within the coalition framework. But the government of local unity is very clear that we expect from officials ethical conduct, and at any given point, transparency in the work and servicing the people of the city.
MMC, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. MMC Loyiso Masuku, member of the Mayoral
Thanks,
Committee
Thabo.
for Group Corporate and Shared Services on those 6 reports there that have been now voted for by Council, and certainly investigations and what we're hearing, consequence management that is going to be pursued. Right, let's take a break. What's making news tonight on In Focus when we continue next?